Hey people, this is Gold here. I done cracked the case on this lost book of Jasher and many others. This is called the Book of the Dead. It was a scroll found in the tomb of Annie. And so Annie was a great scribe, just like Thoth here. He wasn't as good as Thoth, because Thoth could write. He didn't even have to have a stylus. He had invisible stylus there. But that's what they call this, the Papyrus of Annie. And they figure it to be created around 1250 BC. And this is just magic spells written by the priests, is what they say, to help you get into heaven. But this Annie, this is the God of the Hebrews. You know, this is the God of I am, Annie. You know, when he says the covenant which I make, Annie. Assure in Annie. I am the Lord is Annie. I ran into this while I was looking for the Book of the Earth. And many years ago I was talking about it, and I was showing how, they called the Book of the Earth, they spelled it Nun, N-U-N, when the Romans got there. But it wasn't spelt with the other two N's like in Nun. It was spelt with the plant, that all the other language, everybody in the world looked at this and they called it a Tizadi, the letter X. But the Romans turned this into an N. It looked like this, except it had the little were bird in between it, and the were is the U. And so they called this N-U-N instead of X-U-X. But you can see here, it's the sedge. It was the X everywhere else in the world, and when there was two of them, they called it an N. But even when it was separated with another letter, the Romans give it an N, and that tells me they were trying to hide something. But it was big, it was plain as day, right up on the front door, what they call the Book of the Earth. And it was on the wiki page of the Book of the Earth years ago when I found it. I don't know why they're hiding it now, maybe because I said something about it. But if anybody knows where to find that, I want to read the rest of that. Holler at me and tell me where you find it at. But it'll look just like that sedge plant, and then it'll be the little were bird, and then it'll be another sedge plant. And they say it says Nun. So in the past couple movies, I'm going to put this in the same folder called Paiadora. But I've been reading this Isaiah 44 in the Greek, and it was talking about the one God. And then it was talking about creation of false idols and how they worship at the false idols. And then it talked about the pagan ritual, the pagan ritual of roasting. He roast a roast. And I read on down, and I was down here, made it 21. And I was reading to the end of this, and it was really difficult here. So I thought I'd go to the Hebrew and read it first to see if I better figure this out. And you see this come up several times. It says Jacob, my servant, and Israel. This and Israel, you see it's the visceral. And it comes up like this several times in this chapter. It says Jacob and Israel. Is the interpretation they give it anyway. But you can see even here, this is the B and they pronounce it as a V. And visceral, V-I-S-I-R-A-L, Jacob and visceral. And several more times in this chapter, Jacob visceral. And so this can't say Jacob and Israel, because Jacob is Israel. Jacob had fought God, and he beat God's ass so bad that God didn't even know his name. What's your name, he said. And Jacob told his name. He says, hey, your name's not Jacob anymore. Your name is Israel, for you kicked God's ass. So God isn't the greatest. Jacob is greater than God. And where Jacob kicked God's ass, he called that place Peniel. That's the place where you can beat God. So there is no Jacob and Israel. Jacob is Israel. And so everybody in the Bible gets named for a reason. Your name is Israel, and for, this is the same word they'll say is because most time for that because you have struggled with God and with men and have prevailed. And so you don't see another word in here close to Israel. This Sarai here, which means will be, that was, Abraham's wife, will be. But you see this dash right here, this tack after the M, and that means, read this backwards, and it's because Lars is rule. And so Lars means from the city of Laurentum, or Laurentum means, crowned with laurel, and that means you fought and won. If you wear the crown of laurel, it means ain't nobody give you nothing, you fought for it and won it, is what crowned with laurel means. You see it on the ancient Greek Olympians, whoever won gets crowned with laurel. And so that's just more proof that that's what that tack means. In sailing, tack means back and forth. Lars, Lars. Lars is rule. Fought and won the rule. And so it tells a story of the clowns that call themselves Israel today. Will call himself by the name of Jacob. In this one, will write with his hand Yahweh's, and by the name of Israel, name himself. That's them clowns that call themselves Israel today that aren't. But, the real king of Israel is the Karma. Backwards, Karma Maria. Maria, we milk his rule as the king of Israel. But this word here is visceral. You see the visceral, V-I-S dot says I-R-A-L, visceral. The yoke of visceral, and visceral. And visceral has to do with the nervous system. And so the way to beat God at the visceral is at your pineal gland. But I was reading on down this, and I found this word, spelled several different ways. And this word comes up, just this one time like this. And it comes up 63 times, about 30 different words. Most of them are just used one time. And it looks like the base word is that Jasher is what they all have in common. Jasher. And I believe this is what happened to the old book of Jasher. They say it's those who make. And if you look at this word here, in all the forms that come up, the first time it come up is when he formed man, Yotzer. And they give it the IXR base. In the formation of man is when it comes up. In the formation of beast. They say it's creator, devises, fashioned, forms, former, maker, ordained, planned, the potter. But this is the IXRI. And you see that all the time. Except the Romans turned this X into an N. This is Jasher here. You see, most of the time, this looks like a scroll on here. In the book of Jasher, the creator. And so they'll tell you this stands for Jesus, Nazareth, King, and Jews. Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews. Except in the Old Testament, there was no place called Nazareth. There was only Nazareans, which doesn't mean they come from a place called Nazareth. Nazarene was a state of mind. It's the same place that Samson was from. A man from Zar, spelled with an XR. That's the king, a Zar, the Zaro, that had any usum to, had any usum of. And so his wife was barren, no children, and appeared the angel of Yahweh, which is Gabriel, is the messenger that tells you you're going to have children. Told the woman, indeed now you are barren and no children, you shall conceive a son. Therefore be careful, please not drink wine or strong drink, eat anything unclean, for behold, you shall become pregnant and bear a son, and a razor nose shall come upon his head for a Nazarite. He's going to be a Nazarite. And so Nazareth wasn't a place, it was a state of mind. And so that was the first word that comes up in this folly of idolatry. They will worship false gods, is the Jacksery. And it's actually reading, IT and then SRI, it Sarah. It will be less fizzle, column. And then it go on down here to talk about, ashamed they may be who would form a god or an image, mold, nothing that profits him. And this is love light. The first time this comes up is who told you that you were naked? That'd be the word there. You have eaten from the tree that I command you not. From the tree that you should not eat. That's what that word meant. And so this is going to be the God, the image of the tree that you ain't supposed to eat off of. And so all these workmen are, to the chores. The blacksmith had his chores in a razzle. The chores in a razzle. And you see this word, the Jackser, come up many ways here. Fashes it, the JXR. And the woodworker, he's got chores of the oxen, of the trees. Chores of the trees. And you see they changed that word for fashes it. Now it's Joshua, spelled out with the Joseu. And they fashioned it, with a plane and with a compass to marks it out, of my huge, Huge, of the size, the huge size. And over here in the Greek, having chosen this piece of wood is the Zulon, which is the crossbar of the cross in a crucifixion, having hanged on a tree is the Zulu. And to be in the stocks is the Zulon. And his body on the cross is upon to Zulon. And here in the Greek, having chosen a fabricator a piece of wood, the cross, sets it with a measure and forms it with a scraper, and he made it with a carpenter square. And it doesn't say anything about the compass here. The carpenter square is the word used here in the Greek. With glue he composes it. And he made it as the appearance of a man. And as the beauty of a man, he sets in it. He sets it in a niche. And in the Hebrew here, this woodworker craftsman stretches out his rule and marks with chalk and fashions it with a plane, and with a compass replaces the word for square. A compass in a square. He marks it out, makes it like the figure of a man, according to the beauty of a man, that it may remain in the house. And so it's talking about the Masons and their false idol. But if you Google, the ancient idols that people were worshiping, you can't see where you would need a square to create any of them. There's only one idol that was created with a square, and that was this one. The Zulon, the crossbar. The cross, and put on it a man and sets it in the niche. And you see the beginning of this chapter, the IXRI, the creator. So it's cruising the coast week here. So we're going to have loud-ass cars for the next 10 days. And a bunch of them won't leave. They're going to keep it up for a month after. But yeah, there's even more proof it is talking about the Masons down here. And it talks about the God that they were creating here. And that's the main thing I was wanting to read. But I'm probably going to read this whole chapter. And it gives a hint where they learned this. After he eat Jackals the roast, and he says, hey ya. This is the American Indian word for the Great Spirit. You hear it in all their chants. Hi-ya, hi-ya. This is hey-ya. And it's taken the place on the Greek where it said, he said, adu moi hadi, the termination. And they dawned pure, and they got naked. Adu my hadi, the termination. And so this tells where the origin of this came from, where they learned it. It was the Great Spirit of the Americas, the hey ya. Hey ya, come 'em out. CHMM, come the come 'em O-U-T, come 'em out. Hey ya, come 'em outy. That's what he says. Come out, the Great Spirit. The rate I of ores, isn't fire, that's the light. That's the first word in the Bible. It says on the first day, God created light. The first day God created light. The A-U-R, the or. And the A-U-R, the or. Hey ya, the Great Spirit, come 'em out to make ray the light. And so this gives even more credence to the ancient Atlantis story, where it got hit by a meteorite and Thoth escaped to Egypt and brought the language to Egypt. You can see they give a total different word for fire down here. It looks nothing like the ore. But after the roasted meat have eaten, and the rest of it is an abomination, and that's who, W-Y is Y, means who, and T-R-O-W, the trowel, the mason's trowel. The rest of it's the abomination. And who trowel to be. Who trowel to be. That's your first tool of the mason, is the trowel. And he says, hey ya, come 'em out, make ray it, make shine it the fire, the light, and the rest of it into a god he makes of the pistol too. Pistol's what you using to mash your drugs up in the mortar and pistol. And here's the God that he creates right here. I-S and G-U-D is God. And it was written two different ways in two different Bibles, but here, it's the I-S, and then the G, and the dot and the G says A-D, God is God. And that's where our word God comes from. That's why it doesn't sound anything like the Allah and all the other words that they say is God, and they change it to no or to it when it doesn't fit. But this is the God, of the pizzle of is God, and both these had this tack telling me that this reads backwards, O-V, of L-O-V. This is the God of love. And I know exactly what he's talking about, because I did some of that lick pizzle before, and I prayed to hey yah, come 'em out and array the light, and it filled me with love for a long time. It's kind of wore off now, but you'll know when I do it again, because I love everything. And I was telling you, this Pishu meant the cat, and I had a hard time finding that again, but I finally run into it the other day. And this was the Pishu, or the Canadian lynx. This is an American cat. But I had also found where a French writer was in Africa, and he was calling one of the ancient cats there a Pishu too. Break forth is the cat. He's faster than all of them. Try a cat. The ass end is the dino, and the front end is the excel. So I'm going to start reading here. I'm going to read all this in this Hebrew in the next couple movies. And I believe it's going to tell us a story about the left-hand path. But in the Greek over here, he's talking about the right-hand path. The right at the pseudos, the other name for in the dexia move. And so this is the right-hand path. And the right-hand path, think about which hand you wipe your ass with. That's the right-hand path. That's what this means. It's talking about the Cree as the fagin, the Cree as the pagan, of this ass, of this in opton. And they were cooking up this drug and put it in their ass. They were fagging it. Thus, all the ancient stories about the Greeks, they were all fags. So these Egyptologists, they'll tell you some stupid story about these old artists, they couldn't draw a right hand. When you see these artworks with two left hands, that's all it's saying is, I ain't no faggot. Ain't no faggot. I got two left hands. A left hand cigarette. We're going to smoke ours. We ain't sticking nothing up our ass. So I'll have to read closer into here, but The Hebrew codes it better. It has several different ways to read, and they'll code in here better, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be talking about the left-hand path here. And you meet the same God, you just put it in the other end. But we'll find out. I'll start reading this in the next movie. But I'm going to cut this off here. Good day.